I think that the biggest challenge, and if you say negative, is the fact that we have to reapply for licenses. So, and the devil will be in the detail where you do the reapplication, and especially in our industry, the trust industry and asset management, there may be a lot of subordinate type of details like trust deeds and investment mandates that also need to be changed. So it's not as simple as just applying fit and proper, which I'm not so sure I'm fit, but so it goes much deeper, and it's very important to understand. Each and every company must understand that down to the bottom, and it's not as simple as just complying with ticking the box. So I think that's the biggest challenge, and that's where there will be a lot of time spent with that, and also the regulator will put a lot of pressure on FISA to get everything through. And the question will be, what happens if they don't approve an existing company that we apply? I think that will be an interesting challenge.
Anything positive?
Yes, I believe in regulation. I think there's a lot of comments that the bundle type, omnibus type approach was not right, but I must say I've been living with it for many years now and thinking about it, reading it many times, and I think it's the right approach. It's a challenge, but I think it's the harmonization is the right approach. I think over time, and many companies and institutions are involved in more than one license. There may be an insurance leg and another leg. I think the harmonization over time will save time and share knowledge. So I think that is a positive.
Okay, Eket and Risa for you, Mr. Chigariro. Any positive?
Absolutely. And my starting point is not to contradict my colleague on my left here, my industry colleague, but the positive that I actually pick from my side is the re-registration and the regulation of fit and proper for the intermediaries. I think the CEO of the regulator could show us that 9,700 intermediaries in a small market like Namibia is quite huge. And to get those rechecked as fit and proper, regulated, that the advice we are giving is top notch, is actually a very positive thing. But I do agree with Tertius here that the administration of it, both from the people that need to prove themselves as the regulator, is going to be strenuous. And what I see as a negative from my side is more around the outsourcing standard. For me, I think that is going to be a challenge if it is done in a too short space of time. I like to give an analogy to say, you discover a new place to put your well of water. You don't run and put poison in one that is currently there before you've actually established that the new well supplies enough water. And what I'm trying to say here is, I think with all the outsourcing we do, we're going to need to categorize it into buckets. The things that we can outsource in the short term, and the regulator puts timelines in which we must do that, build enough capacity in country. The things that we need medium term to outsource, and the things we know we are never going to be able to outsource. We are never going to manufacture an iPhone in country. So we need to position ourselves what we can insource and what we can never outsource, insource, and never need to work the journey.
Thank you very much. Sarah, I think I'm going to skip that question for you in the interest of time, and we'll probably get back to you on that one. Sorry if you have had your thoughts lined up on that one specifically. I want to spice up things. What is Rafael's view on the expected impact of FIMA on the pension fund industry as a whole? So if you can maybe capture that.
All right, yeah, it's a pity I can't answer the other one. Now I'll be seeming as if I only want to say negative things. I think the reference end is that, the spirit and intentions are good. However, when we require POs and trustees, etc., to meet certain fit and proper requirements from a skills perspective, and we haven't assessed whether our institutions provide the adequate training to upskill these, it's sort of a mismatch. So in other countries you have, accredited training, whether it's for POs or trustees, which we don't have here. So we have to play catch up very quickly to ensure that they can meet with this. The penalty. So yes, $10 was perhaps fines of 1 to 5 million for, punishments that don't fit, the issue at hand, like just forgetting or not informing NAMFISA in due time of certain things. That's definitely strenuous. And then I think the biggest one was that NAMFISA, is getting powers to pass subordinate legislation in areas that may be too much, where there may not be checks and balances to assess whether there could be abuse of the discretionary power that they yield. So I think that was the critical areas, and case in point perhaps could be, introducing certain standards like the preservation that eventually was changed from a regulation to standard. So things like that, I think that those are the critical areas of concern. And that it will be costly at the end of the day, and that we needed to find the means to make sure that we bring a very illiterate consumer when it comes to retirement funding on board in such a short period of time.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Mr. Kabiua, just quickly, except for compulsory preservation, which we've now heard the minister has decided will be postponed until proper consultations have been held, and we will get back to that one. Is there anything else that the labor movements have picked up in the FIMA bill that they are concerned about?
Thank you very much. FIMA bill consists out of 404 pages. And this is my first official engagement with NAMFISA CEO on FIMA. Now, will that question be relevant to me? I don't know. So what it tells you is that what is positive for FIMA is that it's a good regulation that can consolidate. What is negative for FIMA is that they've been kept away from the participatory process where people should participate. And I like the passion of the CEO of NAMFISA that some of the clauses will bring benefits to the people. Benefits to who? Satisfied by who that is a benefit. If the whole discussion around FIMA, which could be a very good thing, the only thing that we don't know what is it, and we need to be introduced, this kind of debate should move forward. That's why we have been saying that the implementation of FIMA, not the preservation fund, FIMA, whole as a law, need to be postponed so we can engage in this and see how best this can add value to the livelihood of the
Thank you. That was very well said indeed. And Mr. Matumola, maybe just to put the question or the point from the previous speaker into context. The FIMA Act itself has got, as we have indicated, about 10 chapters. I have, when I counted last, the regulations to be issued by the minister, I counted 8. The standards to be issued or issued by NAMFISA, I counted 38, if I'm not mistaken. So the question, quite clearly, and the public outcry that led to the minister deciding to postpone the implementation of the one regulation that deals with compulsory preservation. And the question to you, Mr. Matumola, is all these other standards and regulations that the previous speaker has indicated knows nothing about or has not had any opportunity to discuss. The question would be, what's going to happen to bring everyone up to speed?
Thank you on that issue. To start off, FIMA is necessary and it's not a surprise thing. Every time when I joined NAMFISA, I walk around, everybody used to ask me, when will FIMA come into place? And now when FIMA is about to come into place, people say they were never consulted. However, what I want to agree with my colleague closer to my left is there's certain aspects that could affect the workers to which union union directly with NAMFISA never happened. That I can agree with that. However, there was a process of consultation for FIMA that was followed. One, maybe to put the context, when FIMA was in making, there was a consultation with the industry that is being regulated, and redrafting happened. Then it was given to the minister. The minister by then also called stakeholders that the minister deemed fit to call, and the minister had that consultation, and FIMA was redrafted again. Again, on FIMA, given that FIMA is quite complex in some instances, the minister also asked that we need to make presentation as the authority and the Minister of Finance to the parliamentarian, which we made on various occasions. And so that the parliamentarian can also be brought to speed. And that is on FIMA. And on the regulation, the law is quite clear. It says that for NAMFISA to issue a standard, it must consult. And therefore, there will be no standard that will be issued without input from the stakeholders. So the law says clearly about it. And also the law says on how the consultation should be made. If I can refer to that, it says NAMFISA must consult the regulated entities, must consult the associations of the regulated entities, and must consult self-regulatory bodies that are recognized in the financial sector. So what we have been doing over time in preparation for FIMA, there are certain standards that have been chosen that can be, which are critical for the implementation of FIMA. And those were drafted, sent to the industry. We had some face-to-face engagement, some very heated ones. But what I liked out of it was that at least we agreed on principles. And then redrafting happened. We were not supposed to do that, but that's what we thought is a good thing to do. So that when FIMA becomes an act, then it shortens the process of consultation. Now when FIMA became law, we gazetted the standards for consultation, and we are still in that consultation phase. And what we did is we sent communication to regulated entities and their associations. We put adverts in the paper so that whosoever wants to comment, they can comment. But unfortunately, it has come to my attention that even newspapers are sometimes not being read. So some people, I need to go to them and say, please, I need your comments. That's what I've been told. But be it as it may, the question that I have for this forum is that how can we make this consultation fruitful for everyone? There's what is prescribed in the law, but NAMFISA is willing to go beyond what is prescribed in the law. Because what we need is to have a robust regulation that is beneficial for the Namibian people. And this is what we, as people around this table, can say, look, I want also to have my say. And this is the way how you can reach out to us. We put everything on our website, we put them in the newspapers, but that seems not to be enough.
Thank you, Mr. Matumola. Maybe we just I would like to find out from you, sir, how will labor movements ensure that FIMA does not carry any other surprises before finding out perhaps too late?
Yeah, I think that we also vote. I think you haven't yet acknowledged our submission. Hopefully, when we go into office, make sure you acknowledge it. Try to acknowledge it, please. But you have received it. What we are saying is that the 1st of October should be postponed for implementation to allow all of us to go in nitty-gritty things. You look at the definition of stakeholders you have alluded to. There's no consumers. And these are very important people to participate and to be brought on board, understand. So that, because the moment we own FIMA, I'm sure that the way of CO will be much easier to work. But the moment you keep us outside the scope, you will never go to enjoy your seat in your office. So what is most important thing is that, and mind you, if you open those documents, I'm one of the person who's not lazy to read. But when you open that document, even the terminology themselves that have been used there, they need some institution to sort in or to get in expert to understand this concept, because these concepts are going to be used and consumed by ordinary person on the street. So they need to be simplified and so that anyone can take on board. The other component is that you cannot implement FIMA in absence of financial adjudication bill. Because now if consumer is aggrieved, where he or she will go to. So our position is that when we are going to implement FIMA, there should also be this recourse avenue, which unfortunately supposed to be the financial service adjudicator bill.
Okay, thank you. I think we definitely want everyone to participate as far as possible. We will allow the audience at some stage to come in with questions. It's a very representative audience. But quickly, talking about regulations and throwing in a number of other industry players, we have heard a lot about investments by pension funds. JBS is the biggest pension fund in Namibia. So, Mr. Littlebert, quickly, what do the current pension fund regulations say about investments, and how do we expect this to change once FIMA has been introduced?
Yes, our regulation 13 speaks to that, and in terms of the regulations, that is have not yet been changed and finalized. What that will mean in a new FIMA. So the current situation as it is, which is I think focusing on diversification of assets and marketability of assets and underlying investments. It's also important to be able to have an accurate price finding mechanism for these billions and billions of investments. So the current legislation makes provision for that, and the Act states that if anything is in contradiction with the new FIMA and existing regulation, that the new Act will override that. We haven't seen anything that's problematic from that perspective. I think the request for kind of the market is many times the issue of they want to access those investments on an individual basis, and maybe use it for, you can, but I mean for a home loan or something. And I think that's the one area that's coming up many times. But from an investment perspective, it's very sound, and maybe just another 45% they have to be invested in Namibia, which is supporting our economic growth. It was a major contributor to helping us to, up to now, survive the economic crisis, as well as the COVID crisis. There was extra money available which we could have moved into the economy. And so it's also as a nation savings important to protect that.
Thank you.
Please allow me.
Okay, please.
I think it was truly a missed opportunity from a risk-based and outcome-based principle perspective to not have taken stock of policy blueprints like your Namibia Financial Sector Strategy document that ran into the recent one, the integrated Namibian financial framework, to really revisit the limits, the investment limits provided for, at least for long-term insurance and pension funds. And I say this because, yes, our stock exchange has the second biggest market cap on the continent, but if you look at the primaries, there's not much debt. So we really missed an opportunity to assess and see, can Namibia become one that attracts FDI? So if you look at specifically unlisted investments, for instance, there was a need to revisit how some of those limits apply and some of the regulations pertaining to that, because it's not possible to attract FDI because we haven't followed international best practice in the regulations that have been put forward for unlisted investments, Reg 35. Similarly, we were supposed to assess, we keep talking about green hydrogen. Have we looked at, and this probably speaks to us needing to follow a sandbox approach in some of these things. We can't keep pushing out FIMA and a critical area like the stock exchange keeps suffering because, we don't have sufficient local capital to fund things like green hydrogen. So are we able to attract and ensure a platform approach to certain things? So I think there were certain shortcomings, critical like ensuring investor confidence through risk management, even in the unlisted sector. The section that speaks to custodians and administrators, that was a great area to introduce that because unlisted have custodians as well, but current legislation doesn't allow that, and that just brings a lot of risk. It reduces investor confidence, and then you find a lot of institutional investors applying to be exempt from investing in these areas. And so when you take stock and go back to the reforms that were introduced to sort of deepen the capital market and translate from economic growth to financial markets to the layman, there was definitely a mismatch. So I think that's the missed opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And maybe whilst we have the mic, quickly, financial.
Yes, my chair. I just wanted
Would you like to respond to something?
to respond to a few things so that people can know exactly what is happening in the economy, because people need to be well informed. She spoke about regulatory sandbox. Very soon we shall invite the media to launch the regulatory sandbox. And this will be provided for under FIMA. And you spoke about the issue relating to regulation of investment. FIMA provides for grandfathering of these regulations. The regulations that we haven't looked at this point in time will be grandfathered into FIMA, and that need to be looked at appropriately. And there are certain parts of the regulation which the industry has brought to our attention regarding investment. And we have already collected that information. We are now in consultation with the minister to look at those regulations, to deal with unlisted investment and to deal with these investments. And some of the suggestions from the industry have been brought into those regulations. Very soon, once the minister says, go and consult, we will consult you on those regulations. And also, speaking about international practice, I can say to the audience here without fear of contradiction that the Namibian law on unlisted investment had presented this a different international platform. And many are also buying into the concept that Namibia has come into. And Namibia, as the authority, is the member of certain international organizations. So we benefit from all those research. And these are information that are not in the public domain. So I thought I must put the record straight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matemola. I will still get back to you on the issue of consultation a bit later. But just to draw in anybody, it's important also to get Mr. Chigariro to just add his value to the discussion. Insurance, a huge industry, is part of the non-banking. There has been a circular that was issued by NAFISA earlier in the year that talks about insurance that is taken out by pension funds. And pension funds are probably the biggest do you foresee that impacting on the insurance industry, and FIMA specifically?
And that's a very good question, because it's, I'd actually say this is one of the top 5 topical things about FIMA that we are discussing at the moment. And I wish your question was actually not how it's impacting the insurance industry, but how it's going to impact the consumer, because I think they're the ones that are going to be affected the most. So just to make it simple for the rest of us here in the room, is that pension funds, most of us are members of pension funds, and we are still human beings. Death is happening, disability is happening, and we have had many people that have experienced this in the past. When they have died, the pension funds have paid. When they've had disabilities, the pension fund has paid. Now, if this law is read in a sense that says pension funds are no longer allowed to take insurance, the biggest loser of us is not insurance companies. The biggest loser is all of us who are members of those pension funds. So let's just understand what the law is trying to say here. It's trying to say a pension fund has made a promise to the members, and is taking insurance on this promise. The regulator is saying, don't abdicate your promise to the insurance company simply because you've taken it. And I would like to give members a simple example. If you're a member of a pension fund, and the pension fund says, on death, we will pay you X amount, then the pension fund goes ahead and takes insurance. And the insurance company says they will not pay for suicide. What happens when a member dies through suicide? The insurance company is going to say no. But the pension fund does not have a rule that excludes that to be paid. The pension fund still has an obligation to pay the member according to the rules. So what the regulator, from my reading of it, is saying, do not abdicate your promise that you've given to the members. So what needs to happen for this, I hope it can be made very clear from the regulator perspective to say, pension funds, you can go ahead and take insurance, but just make sure that the insurance covers you for what you have promised, and not have that gap in place. So I look at this discussion as it's about the gap that happens if the insurance does not cover you on what you have promised.
Thank you very much. I think that's crystal clear. And here I'm clearly trying to just pick on different points. We would not be able to fully exhaust all of them, and I still want to bring in the audience into the discussion. But just 2 more questions before I do that. The first one to Sarah. Financial illiteracy, lack of awareness, lack of consultation, all these things have been blamed on members or the public not being aware of FIMA and its subordinate law. Who needs to do what?
I think we all have a collective role to play and to coordinate our roles, because certainly, especially from Griffin's perspective, we want to make sure that our members, who are the actual pension funds and administrators to the retirement funds industry, live up to the promise of member education. So it is within our ambit to be responsible for member education. I just think they fell short there, because before you can go and educate your members, you must make sure that you fully understand and have debated on these issues. I think FRI needs to come into the equation as well. I think pension funds is just one of those things that even when you speak to finance people who work in finance, because it's something that will happen when you're 60, everybody ignores it. I think there's definitely a collective role to play. It cannot just be left up to Nafisa. If we had followed the general principles of making law or law reform, you know, if this was in the ambit of the Ministry of Justice, there needs to be that consultative process of participation in making sure that we reach everyone. So I think it's a collective responsibility.
Thank you, Sarah. And dear panelists, Mr. Matomola, this is a very important platform. And I think let us talk so that everyone can seriously take a benefit from this discussion. Now, being in the industry myself, I'm aware that various contributions have been made on these draft standards and the regulations. As a matter of fact, various discussions have been held about some of the issues that are being discussed here that are topical. So Mr. Matomola, to the point of Mr. Kaviwa, that must not be operationalized, but rather should wait until proper consultation has taken place. Mr. Matamola, what do you say to that? And to what extent is NAMFISA able to or prepare to make room to allow for input and consider the reasonable suggestions from the public and the industry at large?
Thank you for that question. I think in answering that question, we need to go back to the frame, and the frame is NAMFISA is a supervisor, and it is not a law-making body. And with that in mind, ours is just to advise the minister and say, please bring this into operation. The minister might decide and say, given all this information I have at hand, maybe I'm not going to allow implementation. Or you will say, look, this information I have, all the contribution from the stakeholders, this is good for me to decide that let's go ahead. So that distinction should be made. The decision to implement the law does not lie in the hands of NAMFISA. To give the industry confidence is that we collect all your information that you have already given unto us, and I can acknowledge here that I received your letter, and all that we put in a tabular form where we will say, here we agree, here we do not agree, and we provide reasons why we do not agree. And this information will also be made public so people can see that what has been taken in, what has not been taken in, and what the minister will decide upon that will be known to the public. So there will be quite transparency in the whole process, because NAMFISA would want to exercise supervision on the industry, on the law that has been made by those who are supposed to make the laws. So the short answer is that I do not know whether 1st of October it will definite or not definite, because the policymakers will make a decision.
Okay, thank you. I think I will get back to Mr. Kaviwa just now. I just want to quickly get a sense, any
event is to be welcomed. I think it's a bit premature. The reason why I say it's a bit premature is that, and that's why we also didn't participate at a request to say something, was that we are in the formal process of NAMFISA going through all the comments which industries have supplied to them, and they must be under an avalanche of comments. I don't want to give them a gap to walk away, and they won't. I know they won't. They're very responsible. And one must also bear in mind that this process has been going for at least 10 years, I would say. And it's gone through 3 ministers of finance, 2 CEOs of NAMFISA, various changes within NAMFISA's staff. So there's a number of aspects that one needs to keep in mind. Yes, you're quite right, Mr. Moderator, when questions are asked, but you know, they say when your nails grow, you don't cut your fingers, you cut your nails. And when misunderstandings grow, you don't cut relationships, you cut egos. And I think we've got to, it's rather a rough thing that I've said, but I think we've got to be mindful of everybody's interests in this. I would also actually go as far as thanking NAMFISA for giving industry more than the normal time for comment once something's gazetted. We asked, industry asked NAMFISA, in particular Mr. Matamola, if they could be a bit soft on us, as it was imminent that the film bill was going to be gazetted just before December. Now we've come through tough times, and the industries, and we asked if we could have more than the 30 days, because that would have made the guys have to sit in December and go through this. They actually gave us up till the 28th of February. And those comments all went in. It was hard work and tough work. You can ask all the guys that were involved in it. But they're in, and we are now waiting for a response. Rumors are, Mr. Matamala might be able to correct me.
Okay, that's your question now?
No, I'm not questioning.
Still a comment, okay.
I'm still commenting. No, I'm just commenting. And was that the responses from NAMFISA would probably start coming from about June. So that's where they're going to formally interact with industry. That's where industry can have another platform to discuss. We've had plenty of informal ones. And I think all I'm saying is that we've got to be mindful of each one's ability and what they expect out of
Thank you. I think that's very clear. In respect of the compulsory preservation, is there a modality that NAMFISA has thought of on how to go and try and make sense of all the comments that have been provided?
That's correct. The process of coming up with the reform, we instituted a project to deal with this within the authority, and we dubbed that project called UDON. So I can confirm to you that June is not a rumor, it's part of the plan. So we have a process within the authority, how we collect information, how that information goes through the governance process up to the level where it needs to get out of NAMFISA to the minister's stable. So that plan is in place. So, and we have shared a bit of that plan with the industry, how things need to happen.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Matamola. Just quickly, I've been reminded by housekeeping, given the theme of the panel discussion, do you see FIMA contribution to financial stability in which respect?
Yes, I think a link maybe to some of the comments made now is that I've also been living with this for 10, 12 years already. And initially I was very against it. But I also learned to read, and it takes time and to educate yourself. I think the positive thing is that if we, and that's maybe the danger, and once again, it's a lot of industries, so I'm talking to the investment, what an investment community. And really, an investor can take his money anywhere, and mostly to our neighbors, which is very efficient models. And if we're not able to compete, and that's what I want to bring in, uncertainty is the enemy of trust. And trust is needed for a financial system. So, yes, we can kick it out further, and at some stage we need to bring that trust. And sometimes it's better to get it on the table, down, and then work further. Otherwise, it will probably be another 10 years, and with uncertainty lingering on. I know there's a lot of issues, specific issues, which I believe feasible. I've already had indications and feedback where they said that, listen, they will change some stuff, which we, on behalf of all our clients, which I think we first and foremost represent, as a trust. I have to trust the regulator to listen to us. And so I think it will bring certainty. I know there's small issues, or not small, but there is issues. But to say that, take it out further, I think, is problematic in terms of that. And every time we kind of rush together and have a lot of meetings, a lot of time, internally and between each other, and then it goes away. due, and even people in the companies change. And new people come in and don't know what has been discussed 2 years ago. So we need to pull the trigger in some sort of way.
Thank you. Mr. Chigariro, I think one burning question perhaps with your background as an actuary. What is your view on the possible cost versus benefit that may have been done on FIMA, and on which side of that scale would you possibly be?
Thank you. You need to tell me about the country and I'm a long retirement. It's almost like asking me what is the cost benefit of having food. You use it wrongly, it's bad. You use it rightly, it's good. I don't think FIMA is a bad idea. I think it's long overdue. It needs to be implemented. But when both the service providers and the consumers are not satisfied, I agree with the Secretary General that the regulator's CEO is never going to be in peace. And I think as much as it is long overdue, I think we are nearly there. I'm almost in the side of the Secretary General here to say, let's just extend the runway a little bit and align on many things. I don't think the runway is going to be extended in another 10 years. I think it's a short extension for us to align on many things, because I'm leaning on the side of benefit. But as long as the service providers and the consumers are not understanding the benefits, there's just going to be chaos in the house.
I think that's a very, very good point that you're making there. But Mr. Kaviwa, now to get to you, you had an earlier question, but maybe whilst you are at it, if you have one message for the consumer of non-banking financial products regarding FIMA, what would it be? And perhaps whilst you are at it, if you have a message for non-FISA, let me not be that specific. What would that message be?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that I wanted to add to my sister asked about the financial literacy. I wanted to say that the first financial literacy opportunity which was lost is during the consultation of 10 years that you referred. Should the community were involved in the consultation, should have understood various concepts and understood various behavior. But just draft is there and come and impose that do ABC will be a problem. So consultation, social dialogue is a critical area. The other component is the issues of industry consulted. And then I'm learning a new word also that I need to go double check in the non-banking sector's dictionary. Consumers. Who is this consumer? Is the workers who investing the money in a fund called consumer? Or the one that I'm investing the money is the service provider, or who's who there? So I will get the terminology very well, because I don't think that for the workers to call us where we are investing our money, whether it's through the insurance, I'm putting the resources into that activity, and you call me the consumer. I have a problem with that a bit. I think we need to get that right. I have also observed that people are always talking about the 10 years, 10 years. 10 years was to hunt. Now we have killed. The elephant is in front of us. Now we have to see how we will use this elephant. And who's the elephant? FIMA. Now we have to see how this elephant will be put in good use. And what can we cook with what kind of spice? It's all we have to look at. We're not saying that FIMA is a bad law. It is a very good initiative. It was done for 10 years with nice experts and with 3 ministers, 2 CEOs. It's good. But what we are saying now, we have it in front of us. In fact, very good for those ones that have handled it. Now we have it. Let's understand it. Let's cook it so that we can have a nice meal on the table. So we're saying. So we have that validation process. After every exercise, the document must be validated. And I'm sure that this kind of engagement, it is a validation. The only last one that I have to say is that redefine your stakeholders. Not this. This notion said, I consulted industry, I consulted what, those terminology will take us nowhere. And as a country, we have ratified Convention 144 of ILO that deals with social dialogue, which defines that how should social dialogue carried out across all aspects. Social dialogue is taking place even at your own house. Your 3-year-old daughter, you can't give her any food, you will decide one day that I want to eat that food. It's because social dialogue. So if we have to change the mode of social dialogue, I'm sure that we will not have this kind of trust deficit and those kind of things. We will own whatever coming from whatever institution because we have been part and parcel of it.
Okay. Thank you. That was a good intervention. One last opportunity to the audience if there's a question. Just state your name from where and then the question.
Yeah. Evening everyone. My name is Prince Elu. I'm from DG West. I started where we had a pipeline of digitalizing the Namibia Stock Exchange to enable investing through your mobile application. So, I just want to acknowledge it's a great time to be alive, considering being part of this reform. My question was, I've seen the conceptual framework that came out for financial technology innovations, October 2021. So that one was with Bank of Namibia. So my question was, is it not regulated by NAMFISA, or why is it that Bank of Namibia has to be the one to impose the analytical framework for financial technology innovations? Yes. Hope you understand my question.
Mr. Tumala, is that question clear to you?
No, it's quite clear. And, I'm quite excited to see our youth taking active role in this, and Namibia is surely on a good footing. Please watch the space, and soon we'll be inviting you on our framework regarding fintech. It's being finalized within NAMFISA, and we will have a day where we shall present them, because fintech is the way to go.
Okay. Any last question from the members in the audience? Okay, there's a question here. The rolling mic.
Yes, good evening.
Okay.
My name is David. I will just go straight to the question. The CEO for NAMFISA will share the presentation with all of us. I just want to believe maybe the CEO to give two good reasons apart from the preservation. Why, coming to the theme, why FIMA is a necessary tool for financial stability to to consumers. Maybe you can give two good reasons for that. Thank you.
That's clear, please go ahead.
It's quite clear. In my presentation, you saw why it is important to have a robust law that contributes to financial stability. And why do we need financial stability? One, we need to have confidence in the financial system. Secondly, when there is a stable financial system, the allocation of resources is done efficiently. And this is why it's important to have a system that is stable. Many of the transactions in the real economy passes through the financial sector. So if the financial sector is destabilized, then you'll find the surplus sector and the deficient sector will not be able to meet. So the financial sector, for lack of better word, is a platform to make sure that the surplus and the deficit can meet, so that we can have the economy to grow. And that's why we need a stable financial system. And that's what FIMA and the NAMFISA Act is bringing into place, to make sure that the system is protected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the answer. Sorry, I just received a question here straightforward. I don't know to who it goes, but it goes, is FIMA performance-based or outcome-based?
FIMA outcome-based or performance-based? That's the question. We earlier heard about the risk-based versus
we normally throw concepts without defining them. So please, if you can define them so that I can be able to respond correctly.
Okay, I think whilst we're thinking about it,
It's based on performance or what the outcomes are. And if I can try to. And I guess, and I want to come back to the previous point, the question of the two reasons. If you have a failure in the financial system, somebody goes down, a significant player especially, a larger player, but anyone, and people lose money, the confidence is destroyed. And it takes, it's very fast to lose confidence, but it takes probably a lifetime, which we can't ill afford for Namibia to build confidence again. So the question is always, are you proactive in protecting that very proud history, which is part of Namibia's, the reason why we have a market as we have, which we can tap and distribute and use, or do you wait for a thing to happen, the wrong thing? And I think we all know that you need to be proactive. Coming back, I think Darcy's mentioned it. It's just, you don't have to be overly effective. Just be clever and balanced in your regulation. And that's where I see the risk-based approach, the more outcome-based in terms of playing around. So when FISA goes and say, okay, I'm from Capricorn as a management, you're a large player. I'm sorry, you're large, you have to carry the burden of more regulation in some sense. This is a small player, a micro-insurer, maybe a fintech. Let's be more, we don't have to be that heavy on us. So the larger players do carry the burden. I hate it, but that's the reality. So maybe to answer some of those questions.
okay, so I think let's move now towards a close. And I think in doing that, Mr. Matumola, the earlier question from Mr. Kadiwa, the elephant. Do you have enough people to eat that elephant come 1 October?
The answer is yes. And to put it into context, FIMA was not just conceptualized just the other day. It has been in making for many years, and therefore we have followed a project approach in dealing with FIMA. And while I have a flow also, I need to respond to earlier to issues, challenges that were raised by my friends on the other side of saying, whether are we going to be able to re-register everybody? If you read the law, there are those that are going to be re-registered. There are those that are not going to be re-registered, will be deemed to be registered. And so we made those distinctions. And with that also, with regard to the intermediaries, we have placed the onus on the financial institutions, like the institutions that you lead, to vet the intermediary and bring us the list. Say this we have vetted in terms of the law and you confirm that. And then we register it. So the processes are being refined to make sure that some of those things that we see currently that as, for lack of better word, some form of irritations are being removed. So a plan is in place. This big elephant has cost us some sleepless nights to try and find the way of how to eat it and to finish it.
Okay, Sarah, maybe to you, your concluding remark in the form of what is the message to your members in particular, but if you have an opportunity to give a message to Nafisa now, what would that be?
Just that we must really look at the link between spurring economic growth. Oh, sorry. It's been a long evening. Perhaps just that we should start with the end in mind, the ideal, We definitely can't delay the, going ahead with FIMA. And I think where there are problematic areas, one has always wondered, could we not have taken a bite-sized approach where, you pass what you need to pass? Because, like I said, the stock exchanges need that broadening that is so very well within FIMA, and this speaks to access to capital, and the country needs that. So we need to go back to the drawing board and understand what needs to be prioritized. If there are truly areas that require further consultation, maybe they be top, but those that need to...
My message is, don't throw the baby with the bathwater. There is actually a lot of good and let's address the bathwater issues with the regulator to see how can we be accommodated. But let's keep the baby. This is a very important step for the nation and for us. It is put there to protect the public. And I'm quite convinced that it is. But we just need to walk the journey. To Namfisa, my message would be, you may have consulted, but it looks like you didn't. And I guess there is a difference between some people we need to go and ask, if you look at what I'm asking you, what do you think? So that we move together better. And I think where we are now, if we are going to implement now FISA needs to be a lot more accommodating. We can't move from a law 50 years ago to a new law and expect everybody to live up to the new rules and the new culture. So we're going to have to walk this journey. And is FISA prepared to accommodate people and handholders over this journey? And those, for me, especially with the issues of outsourcing, are we going to walk this journey together? With the issues of pension funds taking insurance, are we going to walk this together? Or are we just going to put a rule and say, get over? And with the issues of pension fund preservation, it's actually a very good rule. Go anywhere else in the world and ask. Preservation of pension is very important. 90% of 55-year-olds, the biggest career is at 55 years old, the biggest asset they have is their pension fund. So it's actually a very good thing. It's just that we need to help each other understand what the regulator actually is trying to say. And people understand that it is good for us. And I don't think that is come across with respect to the regulator clear enough that, so that members can support this.
Yes, I can really say I agree with what you said now, both of you. And I think, and maybe in a lighter tone, I think there's some sort of a course you do in regulation 101 or lawmaking 101, and it leads to like a parent. And yes, if you tell the children to go and go to the bathroom and bath and come and eat, at some stage you have to tell them, listen, and you must lay down the rules. And I know people are like that, and I think that links to the situation we have where you bring out something, and if it's too open, then nobody really responds. So that unless the lawmakers and the regulators put that line down and get the reaction, which is, I think, part of the process, which we have now, and in the end, then you get to the line. Otherwise, people tend not to read, not to listen. And we as industry players, from our side, we really try to put our clients' best interest at heart. But there is aspects we miss, which other players brings in. And I also hear that we need to work through them. But isn't there enough time? We have 6-7 months to work some of these key issues through. So let's put the effort in and get it on the table and discuss it. Maybe kick it out a bit if needed to next year, but let's not wait till then and then start to work. Then we must start to work now and get the issues on the table. And I think a night like this is for that purpose. Maybe just a last comment. That, the one thing I always worry about increased regulation, that's a worldwide problem, and it links to the young gentleman's question, the fintech. actually, and I want to get to the 10 years, one can actually argue that the FIMA bill is now kind of late. Because the aspects that we don't, because of this speaking out, is a question about digitalization. Because digitalization is really the empowerment of the world. I don't have to convince anybody of that. And what worries me a bit is that there is a gap between the manual in-person advice world, which I pick up tonight, and the act, and not something enabling digital advice, which could have been the way to reach much more people for financial deepening.
Okay.
So I think the message in the future is think a bit about the digital aspect as well in this process to empower us.
Mr. Kapilibua, your last comments, message
is that I think that change is inevitable and change is a permanent thing. So when we're changing and evolving, we should never be too much resistance. But those that are driving that change must take everybody on board. It's very imperative. What we are saying from trade unions is that we are saying FIMA is bad. Neither we are saying also preservation is bad. We are asking how did you arrive at it? Just tell us, which no one is able to tell except industry. And that's where the problems comes. And the 7 months is nothing. We have started the journey. If we have to accept that, yes, we have to take everybody on board, let's identify the issues of educating each other, the issues of understanding each other, the issues of also us having an input in both some regulations and standards. And if need be, even if you take us through FIMA, and we pick it up that there is specific clause, we have that mandate even to go and lobby with the parliamentarians to say that here we need to change. When you understand, it doesn't mean that that person understands each time is short. This time is very short, it's very much. So what we are requesting, list us on your stakeholders list. They are available. And when we don't have capacity, we have institutions, nationally, internationally, that provide capacities. That is pro-workers. Want to understand that word? Pro-workers, not pro-capital. So we need to balance the two. Those that are driven by capital understanding and also driven by social understanding. So these two legs need to move in the same directions and assist each other. So what we are saying is that let's continue to consult, let's push the 1st of October, and the work should start so that we can keep on until. I'm sure that the instrument is good. I scanned through it, there's nothing so bad, we need to understand. And especially the devil lies in the details. Those regulations and standards. And those are not the ones that we are messing with. And those are the ones that we can easily also change and amend compared to the head of parliament and the other processes.
Thank you, Matamola. Any last words for you to capture the evening and any assurance if needed from our officer?
Thank you very much. I think I should thank the association together with Nasir that we can have this engagement. I always tell people that my office is always open. And when we talk about engagement, we are open with I see my friend there says no, but I know I have answered this question many times. So our office is always open and we are open to discussions. You know, making something to work requires different views, and these views need to be looked at holistically. And so we are saying to yourselves, please read through those regulations, standards, and provide your well-researched comments so that we are able to deal with it. Secondly, also, the law is not, when it is passed, it does not mean that the law cannot be amended. If there is anything in the law that requires amendments, bring it forth, and we'll take it up with the lawmakers and say, look, the world has moved, and over 10 years we've been busy with this, and therefore we have missed the opportunity. The world does not wait for us, and the world does not, or change does not require a permission from anybody else. And therefore, we need to adapt to change, or else we'll find ourselves being a nation that is 20 years behind. So let's try and do what we need to do. Now, FISA is open. FIM is available for everyone, and everyone can access it, and everyone is welcome to make their informed engagement with us, so we are ready to do that. And all your comments will be taken and considered and responded to and provided to the relevant decision makers to make informed decisions. That's why I even accepted to come to this platform, so that I can hear views that when I go out there, I have added from, for lack of better word, the horse mouth, so that I can apply my mind when these discussions are being made. Like my friend here said, these things are made in the boardrooms. So he did not say it today, he said it the other day when we met in the boardroom. So,
okay, Tomara, thank you very much. Not to take the risk of overstepping my mandate, Jason from Asia, did you want to come and express or extend a vote of thanks?